How's it going, you guys? Welcome back to episode number 15 of Flight Time, and today we're going to be talking about flying in cities. I've got to say that flying in cities is probably my favorite thing to do. The only thing is it's kind of hard from a legality standpoint, I guess, when you're talking about FAA regulations. It gets a little bit sticky, it gets a little bit tricky, but I live here in West Philadelphia. I fly the city all of the time. But I find that shooting with drones, you don't necessarily have to be in the city, like flying between the buildings. So, Ken, I know you live near Tampa. That's the city you fly at a lot. But do you prefer flying in the city or like in the suburbs? I guess, does that make sense?
I mean, it's sort of tough because I live by the water, and the whole coastline is like really gorgeous, but I think flying in the city is a different dynamic. I don't necessarily know if I prefer it just because it's a lot more nerve-wracking.
Like what you think that more can go wrong?
Yeah, I mean, at least in Tampa, we have a lot of air traffic for some reason with helicopters. And I'm not saying Philadelphia is any different, but I noticed because Tampa City is technically within a 5-mile radius of TPA, which is the Tampa airport, but it's not necessarily a no-fly zone because the planes aren't flying over that area. So as long as you have your 107, you're allowed to fly in the city. There's no other operating airports that would prevent you.
You know what's great? About Philly is that the Philadelphia airport is in like such a perfect position to the point where it really doesn't take up or cover a lot of important area where you'd want to fly. Like down near the Philly airport, it's just kind of like industrial. You really wouldn't want to fly down there.
Right.
And as you get into the city, you begin to face some altitude restrictions. Like I'm looking in Kitty Hawk right now, and there's definitely areas where you can't fly as high. But a lot of like the main parts, like the Schuylkill River, the Ben Franklin Bridge, the Art Museum, there's a ton of really great things that you can fly. And they're out of that zone. They're out of that airspace from Philadelphia. But I've got to say that for the longest time when I first got my drone, I did a lot of flying out near where my mom lives in Westchester, which is like farmland compared to what Philadelphia is. And ever since I've brought my drones to school, where I go to school in West Philadelphia, I've been doing a ton of city flying, and I'm addicted to it. And I feel like even when you've come up, we've hit every single spot in this city that we can fly in. I mean, there's almost like no more new spots to try out.
Yeah, that's the only bummer is we have flown so many spots, and I remember I was pretty timid the first time I flew because I was like, holy crap. I mean, I think at one point, like I was like sort of like, I don't know, shaking a little bit because I was like, man, this is really nerve-wracking. It was sort of windy a couple of times we flew, but it's definitely tedious, but it's probably going to deliver you some of the most rewarding shots.
I agree. And it's funny, we always go down to this Chick-fil-A just off of Christopher Columbus Boulevard, and there's the US America?
USS United States.
Yeah, it's a really old ship, bigger than the Titanic, looks like the Titanic. But what's crazy is the other day when I was down there, I saw some Coast Guard choppers flying. I mean, look, if you can imagine how tall a ship is, I would say they were flying no more than 50 to 75 feet above the top of that ship, which is crazy. I mean, you were talking about choppers. These Coast Guard choppers were flying over the Delaware River, and they were really close to I guess the ship, and we fly around there a lot, so that's something we got to keep in our back pocket. But when you think about flying in cities, I often get asked this when I post footage of Philadelphia. People will say, well, did you get a permit to fly there? To which I kind of sit there and I scratch my head, like I wonder what they mean by a permit. Like did I get permission from a certain person in Philadelphia? Did I get a permit or a waiver from the FAA? I mean, what do you think these guys mean when they ask for a permit?
I think they're talking about from the city, essentially. I don't necessarily think they're talking about the FAA, but it's funny though. I'll sort of like, comb through the comment section of your videos after you post a new flight video in the city, and I just wait for it because sure as clockwork, there's going to be like one or two people, usually a top comment that are asking that. I've been asked that too, like in Tampa, like they're like, oh, who do you have to ask for permission to fly there? And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I just look at the airspace and fly.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things that kind of limit what you can do in the city. That would be like you're not allowed to fly over people. You can't fly out of line of sight. So like if you fly behind a building or something like that, then that's breaking your line of sight. But you probably wouldn't want to fly beyond or behind a building because you'll pretty much lose signal immediately. So this is kind of unrelated, but if you're ever going to be flying in the city, I'd always recommend setting your return to home altitude to 500 meters. That's 1,600 feet, so that if you are near buildings, the drone will then just fly all the way up to 500 meters and come back to you. But I think that a really good amount of city shooting can be done outside of the city and sort of like around the skyline. I think that that's where the best shots come from because you can fill the frame with the buildings. Especially in Philadelphia, you can get away with flying over the Schuylkill River, not flying over people. You can fly over the Delaware River, but there are going to be instances where you go over certain roads, certain bridges that are busy, and that's just something that if you're flying in the city, you've got to deal with, and something that I think I might start doing, even though it might be overkill and I only have it for the Phantom 4 Pro, is put that parachute on. I think that would help out a little bit.
Yeah, I think so, especially in the city, just in case. I mean, you never know if you happen to drop down. I mean, the Mavic is one thing coming down, but I think the Phantom is, I don't know. I would probably just rock it just for the heck of it.
You think about how many drones you've heard falling from the sky. Of course, like the GoPro Karma, that was falling from the sky because of a battery issue. Sometimes these drones, they'll just malfunction. A motor will go out or whatever. Something could happen to the drone and it just starts falling from the sky. But I've never heard of a drone falling from the sky and causing like catastrophic damage to a person or to traffic or to property. There's one thing that comes to mind. And I don't mean to talk bad about him, but Ken Herron in Atlantic City flew behind a building, lost connection. The drone returned to home, hit the building, and fell down. Now, I can only imagine if we were there in Atlantic City during like a busy time where there's traffic going by all the casinos. It landed right in the middle of the road, and luckily nobody was in the road. But if this drone fell on somebody's windshield, potentially hurt them, or if it fell through the windshield, distracted them, and then caused an even bigger accident, I could see that being one of the biggest blows to drone flyers. Right now, there's a lot of people trying to push to get the FAA to allow flight over people, and one of the big things you need is a parachute. And if your drone does go down, being able to deploy that parachute is going to mitigate any sort of damage that could happen or any sort of accident that can happen if it falls out of the sky.
Yeah, I was thinking about that flight that he did, and when he smacked the building, and I mean, of all buildings to hit, a casino for one, and yeah. What is really surprising about that is that no casino personnel approached you guys.
So here's something funny. Brian Cook, which was a guy that was with us, put a GoPro up on top and left it recording, and he accidentally left it up there. So as we went down to go get the drone, we packed up our stuff and we were leaving. The GoPro was still up there, and you can see the security guard come up and kind of look around and then go back down. So a security guard did come up, and it was caught on Brian's GoPro. And I remember driving all the way up to the top, grabbing the GoPro, and then driving all the way back down. But yeah, I mean, look, the security guards did come, and I don't want to talk too much else about that, just because it was such a bad experience. But that serves as a really good learning lesson for anybody flying in the city, that there are going to be these potential objects that you can run into, and these objects are billions of dollars. These buildings are massive.
Absolutely.
And you're going to get in trouble if anything happens. So that return to home altitude is everything. As long as if you lose connection, if you've got your RTH altitude set to 1,500 meters, I mean, you're pretty much golden. It's just going to come right back to you.
Yeah, I think that's like the first thing I do now when we are flying in the city is I double check. I slow down a bit more when we're setting the drones up, and I make sure that that RTH is set right, and I'm a little bit more careful about my maneuvers. where we would typically orbit towers and get, these really close cinematic shots, I'm a little bit more cautious because I guess I'm always concerned about the people within the building, and then all of a sudden they see this drone coming up out of the building.
Yeah.
And, like the last thing I want to do is cause like mass hysteria flying in a city.
Yeah. So here's a question that I've always had. What does the FAA state is like a group of people? Because they always say that you're not allowed to fly your drone over people. So what does that mean? Like, does that mean if there's one single person, I'm not allowed to fly my drone in a certain area? Like, I've never understood the true context.
I think
of
it's
that.
directly. I believe it's directly over them. I gotta. You know what I'll do is just remind me. I'll ask Mitch what that definition is, because, like I said, he teaches the 107, and he's constantly working with the FAA with these rules and regulations, having people understand them. So I'll ask him. I'm sure he knows the specifics, but yeah, because I mean, sometimes, like I'm at the beach and I'll be like doing a top-down shot of the obviously of the beach, and there will be people on the beach, but I'm not over them. It's just the way the field of view is. It makes it look like you're over them, but you're actually pretty far to the left. It just looks like you're over them.
But so I'm just trying to understand, because like if I've got my drone in the air and if there's one single person on the ground, well then does that mean that I can't fly directly above him? Does that mean that there's like a buffer area around him and it's a larger area I can't fly over that person? I remember I was down in Ocean City, Maryland, and the lifeguards were giving me hell for flying my drone. They were saying that it was a state park, which, first of all, Ocean City, Maryland, the beach, is not a state park.
Right.
Second of all, they were saying to me that I was in controlled airspace, and I remember when they told me that, I literally pulled out my phone, opened it up, and I was on the Kitty Hawk app, and I was like, well, look, we're the blue dot. The airspace begins like down here on like 49th Street or whatever, and we were up on 43rd or whatever at the time. We were about 6 or 7 blocks away from where it even started, and that totally shut him down. And then the guy just eventually said, well, look, you're not allowed to fly it over people. Flying it over people would be like, he gave me a definition of like a certain amount of people, like per square mile or like per
I
acre.
think he sort of pulled that out of his butt, man.
I know, and that's what I'm saying, because look, this guy, he's like the head of lifeguards or whatever. But I'm just trying to understand what that means, because that's the biggest thing limiting flying in the city.
There has to be something to that, because when I was in Vegas, I forgot to tell you this. So when I was in Vegas, I was like looking for a cool spot to fly, and I found this lookout cove. And on this lookout cove, I noticed that there was a helicopter landing pad. So it's a path to a hiking trail. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it's not a state park, and there was some rangers there, and I was like, hey, is it legal to fly your drone in Red Rock Canyon? And he's like, yeah, it's perfectly legal. He's just, we would ask that you don't fly here. And I was like, oh, is there any reason why? And he was like, well, there's just a lot of people, and you're not allowed to fly over people. And I looked down through the walking trail. I'm like, there's nobody walking here. And it was like a perfect spot to fly, but I didn't want to argue with him, and he was being nice enough, like telling me some good spots to go check out. Mm-hmm. So I just left. But that was the only time I've ever had somebody tell me about flying over people. Otherwise, I've really not ever been approached from a legal standpoint.
Approached for what?
For flying my drone. Okay,
well, I've told the story before. I've been approached a couple of times, and all has been fine. But yeah, man, the flying over people is the biggest hurdle right now with city flying, and it's not even a hurdle for just you and I wanting to fly our drones and get some cool photos and cool videos. It's also a hurdle that a lot of these, I guess, startups are facing, because they want to be able to deliver things through the city, but with drones not being able to fly over people, that's just not something that can happen. One of the biggest things is being able to deliver what are they called, organs with drones from hospital to hospital. I mean, first of all, that would just be so much more efficient than sending it by ground through traffic, weaving through the streets, when a drone can go up, straight and right back down and deliver something. And this is something that could save lives. But FAA regulation, not being able to fly over people, is totally screwing it up. Now, I could see the FAA saying, well, look, we can institute this whole parachute thing. If you've got a parachute, you're able to fly over people. If you can meet, it's like the ASTM standard, then you're allowed to fly over people. But I could also see them saying, and this actually might be of benefit to these people carrying really heavy payloads, saying you need to have like a hexacopter, 6 motors, so that if one of the motors fails, then the drone will still stay up. I think redundancy is going to be key in this aspect.
So how well did that redundancy work for Unique?
Well, look, I'm just saying from a redundant standpoint, there's a lot of redundancy already built into these drones that we have.
Have you seen those? Have you seen those like when they lose a motor? So there's some tests where they throw, I forgot what they were doing, but anyways, they were killing off like 2 or 3 of the motors, and it goes into sort of like a death spiral. Mm-hmm. But it's sort of it comes straight down. It doesn't really track left or right, or it doesn't move. It comes straight down, but it doesn't come down as fast or as slow as you would think, but it's slower than, natural descent, but it's still coming down.
So here's the thing with the hexacopter, from what I've heard, is like when you put it up in the air, if it loses 2 motors on the same side, it's going to go down. But if it loses 1 motor on one side and 1 motor on the other side, it's still going to be able to fly. Now, of course, as soon as you lose 1 motor, you just want to land. You don't even want to attempt to continue to fly on 5 motors instead of 6, but redundancy is key. We see all these redundant features even built into DJI drones. Like with the Inspire 2, we've got 2 batteries. Not only does that allow us to hot swap them, but we've got redundancy. So if one of the batteries just totally stops working, we can still come back and land the drone. And of course, we've got dual IMUs. I believe that there's like dual barometers too. So there's a lot of redundancy built in. The motor is just like the one thing. Like you can't make a portable hexacopter.
Yeah, there needs to be better solutions for parachutes, I think, for these drones. The offerings that are out there right now are sort of clunky. And the ones that I've seen for the Mavic 2 Pro specifically, like the prototypes, they're just really clunky, and these drones still descend at a pretty rapid rate, because these parachutes are not very large. Like they're not gonna, they're not catch. I think they're too small for the drone. I think it needs a larger parachute, for one, in order to, to be able to operate a little bit more efficiently. But that is only gonna work at I wouldn't say very high altitudes, but I would say 250 plus. If you're 100 or maybe even like 90 feet up in there, which, a drone comes down at 90 feet, you're still going to hurt somebody. I don't think it's going to be as effective, because it's not going to have as much stopping power.
And I totally agree. What I think right now is, innovation in the drone space has kind of peaked. We could see some things change over the next years, but in terms of like what we've got now, it's hard to imagine that we're going to get any better. And I know that these companies are good at pulling stuff out of nowhere and making something that's brand new that wows us. But in terms of like flight time, like until we get like the graphene batteries or a major leap in battery technology, I don't see us getting a ton more flight time in the future. So I think that right now is a really good time for these manufacturers to take a step back and work on the safety aspect of these drones. We see DJI is implementing light beacons built right into like the M200 series, the M200 V2. So they're committed to adding these features for safety. So do you think that they would ever implement a built-in parachute to the drone? Do you think that that's something they would do?
I think eventually they may do something like that if safety trumps all, which it always should. But I think eventually they will. I mean, the reality is what doesn't get better is the battery tech. What they're doing is they're making these motors and these ESCs and just the overall hardware more efficient, so it's optimized to work better with the battery, but the battery tech's the same. We saw the same things happen with cell phone tech, where they're optimizing the software, optimizing the hardware, but the battery tech staying the same. It's just maximizing the potential of that battery. So I think if we get a major leap in battery, the safety will take a jump as well. And I'm just not seeing anything like groundbreaking. You know, I was hoping to see something like that at CES this past year, but we never got it. Nothing even close.
And we're talking about dual batteries here, and I think it'd be pretty easy for DJI to implement a dual battery system even into their Mavic 2 Pro. Now, maybe because they're putting in 2 batteries, the size of the batteries might be smaller because they have to account for different locking mechanisms. But imagine on the top, just being able to fit in like a set of 2 batteries. It's something that they could definitely do, and that helps with redundancy because I think that, like I've said, the 2 weakest points are the battery and the motors. One of those goes, your drone is falling from the sky, and that's the biggest thing that really sits in the back of my mind as I'm flying near a populated area. Now, I'm never flying my drone like over top of a crowd of hundreds of people. Like I never fly over parades or anything like that, but from time to time I'll be buzzing over like a street, right, where there's a couple of cars going past. And part of me like thinks like, okay, is this legal or illegal? Because there are these fast moving cars and I've got a fast moving drone, and if I fly over the street and if my motor dies, well, it's going to continue to move forward. So it's just so hard to understand. And it's not like I just fly around the city for fun. I've gotten these different assignments and like jobs in the city for taking photos and videos of buildings, roofs, etc. And there's just certain things that you've got to do in order to get the job done, and flying over people and being safe about it is one thing that's got to get done sometimes.
Yeah, and I'm sure eventually, you know, with certain insurance policies, as drones become more and more prevalent in, you know, the commercial sphere, insurances will have to learn to adapt as well. Because as of right now, if you even mention a drone, people get really goofy. I know at least State Farm,
they dropped
from a business. Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. And the only other options out there is like, you know, if you have some sort of business policy, which it could get very costly, or you use on-demand insurance through Skywatch, which once again, very costly.
Yeah, and the FAA tries to really push that these drones are full-fledged aircraft. When you think about it, though, you know, State Farm, when I was going through the insurance setup process, I literally got the policy and everything. And like a week later, she calls me, the woman that I was speaking to at the office, and she goes, yeah, we're not going to be able to insure you because, your main business is flying drones. She said, we don't insure aircraft. But I'm just sitting there thinking to myself, like, these aren't aircraft. They are to a certain extent, but they're not like a full-fledged plane. It doesn't cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. So, and like you said, that insurance companies are going to have to catch up and come to terms with what's going on. I think the FAA's got to do the same thing, because the regulations they've put in place have seriously made the drone market so stagnant. I really do think that it's because of regulation that we're hitting this like low point with drones. And if they were to give us a little bit of leeway in terms of restrictions and regulations, I think that we'd see the drone market to begin to progress again, kind of like it did after the Mavic Pro came out. I'd say the Mavic Pro was like peak drone industry.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you. And I've seen some videos just recently, like, re-pushing the Mavic Pro just today. So, I mean, I don't see them putting out anything that's going to top that. And that's
here's
right
my
now
thing.
The best you can get in the United States.
Well, what? So I'm talking about the original Mavic Pro. That was like the boom. That was when like drones like took off, because that drone was so revolutionary that the drone industry took off after that. And it did have a little spike when the Mavic 2 Pro came out, because the Mavic Pro was finally, refreshed, updated. It got the features that it needed. But when that original Mavic Pro came out, man, things just went crazy. Right now inside of my bag, I carry the Mavic 2 Pro and the Anafi, and part of me is looking to replace my Anafi with either the Mavic 2 Zoom or the Mavic Pro. But here's the thing. We both use Peak Design backpacks, the everyday backpack. I've only got the 20L, so it's very restricting. I know you just got the 30L, right? How do you like that?
I really like the 30L, and, I've been touting around the 20L, and I still have the 20L. I'm actually, the whole reason why I bought the 30L is my brother he has the gray version of the 30L, and he wanted the black version. So I was like, all right, I'll trade you. But the main reason was I upgraded my laptop to a MacBook Pro, and the 15-inch MacBook Pro just fit way too snug, I felt, in the 20L.
It's really tight, and I've got a tablet in there too, and it's like what I think you have to do is really stretch it out. Like I've noticed that now it's a little bit easier putting it in and out, and I think that it's just been over time the backpack has expanded with the laptop being in there.
Oh, I'm sure it does. It's fabric, it's going to stretch, but with the 30L, I had no issue with that, and I know I'm going to be up in Philly on next Friday, so. I'm literally just going to pack because I'm flying home Sunday. So it's like flying Friday, fly home Sunday. I'm just going to throw a couple of like spare clothes in there.
Yeah.
And see how that goes. I'm going to try to pack as light as possible. I have a problem packing like light though.
Well,
I always over gear.
So do I. It's just, I think it's just a thing. I don't know. If I were you, man, and if you're looking to kind of do like a one backpack type of thing, I would look into the 40L that Peak Design offers.
They have a 40L?
They do have a 40L, and it looks totally different. It's more geared for like one backpack traveling almost. So
I didn't see that. I wonder if it's capable of being, because like this one I can take on the plane as like a personal item.
Yeah, you can do the same. I'm pretty sure with 40L. Check it out. But
I mean, this one's pushing it though.
I know it is.
I see it right here.
So speaking of flying in cities, Ken is coming up here. We'll probably do some flying in Philadelphia, but we're also going to be doing some flying in New York City. We've got a group of guys up there. I fly with them frequently, and whenever Ken comes up, we try to go up there and we fly with them. And New York City is tough to fly in, but these guys know the spots. Like they know the spots where it's legal to do so. Like the littlest portions of like when you're looking on Air Map or Kitty Hawk, and the whole entire place is just flooded with all these different, airspaces and warning zones. They find the littlest slivers that you're able to fly in, and it's awesome.
So they really do maximize their flight out there, which is pretty impressive.
It really is impressive. One thing that I'm going to do, hopefully this weekend, if they're on, is take some photos of the lights, the 9/11 tribute memorial lights. And there's a little sliver where you can fly your drone, put it up in the air, kind of put it over the water and get a shot. I'm really looking forward to that. But another place that I really, really wanted to fly is just off of the Palisades Parkway. That road is gorgeous. It's beautiful. And they have all these different lookout points. That's like the Palisades Interstate Parkway. But they don't allow drone flight. Like if you go on their website, they say no drones. And I'm a little bit bummed because that would just be incredible to fly from there. I'm trying to think of a way I'm trying to think of a way to do it. Like I want to try to give them a call.
Let me ask you a question. Are you not allowed you're not allowed to take off and land, but flying over it is okay?
I'm guessing so, because as the FAA states or as the rule goes, these people, these corporations and groups and organizations, they don't own the airspace above them. Like you can fly over state parks, but it's just you're not able to operate, take off, launch, land from them. So I'm looking up the Palisades Parkway, like the Palisades Park, and they have like these regulations, and one of them is no drones. So let me see here. I forget the exact website that I was on. Maybe this is it. It's a very old website. All of these like government websites are so old. You know what? I think that I sent you a screenshot. It's underneath of their regulations. Their background is of like rocks or something, but it says drones. Flying of drones or radio-controlled aircraft is not allowed in the park. So that, to me, that sounds just like, look, you can't fly it from the park. But even if we put it up and then we go over the water, like the Hudson right there, I think it is, once we put the drone up in the air and we get over the water, we're still operating from their property. So I don't know. I want to check it out. I also looked, and they actually offer permits for filming. But for us, I was going to just apply for the student filming permit because it's like the cheapest option. And it's still $200.
Really?
$200 for a student filming permit. And if you want to do like a large scale permit, like I'm guessing this is for like a movie, it's $1,500. So
that's a little ridiculous.
Yeah, and I know that I've run into the same issue down here in Philly. I try to fly from Race Street Pier, and they say the same thing, that you need a permit. And it's basically like, if you're doing this and you're not just going to keep it for your own personal use, then you're going to have to get that permit. So I pulled up this page here. It is photography and filming permits. You've got to check out their form. You got to give them like a ton of information. So these are the different options that they offer. It says nonprofit/student, $200 per day. Commercial small scale, $350 a day. Commercial medium scale, $750 a day. And then commercial large scale is $1,500 per day. And then it says additional fees may be applied or requested, or on requested special arrangements, whatever that means. So,
wow, I don't know. I mean, wherever we're gonna fly, hopefully we get some different footage. I mean, that's like goes back to what we were talking about in the beginning. There was every point of Philadelphia. We've basically seen or have flown, and I'm really looking to try to find something just a little bit different this time.
It looks like you've also got to have general liability insurance of $1 million.
Okay. So we're definitely not flying that.
They require. Well, we've got it. First of all, I'm not insured anymore. They dropped me, but we can get it through Skywatch. We can get the $1 million of liability insurance, or we can use Verifly or whatever.
True, we could use Verifly. That would probably work out pretty good.
Yeah, it's just a real pain though, because it would be such a great spot to fly drones. I wonder why they don't allow it. I wonder if the situation would be different if we went to these lookout points. Like, I understand if through their parks they don't want drones flying over top, but I'd love to be able to fly over the water there and capture the cliffs. Have you seen those cliffs? You know what I'm talking about, right?
No, I don't think I have.
If you go to the njpalisades.org, if you go to their website, those cliffs look insane. They almost look like something you would see off of Ireland, those big massive cliffs, although these have trees on them, and especially starting soon, like maybe when you come up here, they're definitely going to be in the process of beginning to change, because I can see that the leaves are starting to get lighter and a little bit orange down near me. So I can only imagine going up further north, they've started to change a little bit more, and also in a week they should be in a good spot. But it's gorgeous, man. These huge cliffs, they would be perfect for drone flying, and we might even be able to just launch from the other side of the river and go over. So we'll see. We'll make it work.
I may actually bring my standard controller and leave the smart controller home now, just so I can be able to try to if there's a distance limitation.
If you even want to save even more space, I've got 2 Mavic 2 remotes, so you can fly with one of my remotes if you really wanted to save a little space.
I don't think I'm on like that tight of a premium for space. I mean, the smart controller doesn't take up that much room. It's actually thinner than the standard controller, but you can just pack the other one a little bit differently. But I don't know if we're gonna have any issues with flight restrictions, so I may just fly from my phone and just say screw it, not worry about the smart controller.
I know. What? Oh, with the smaller remote?
Yeah, +2 battery life. Like, it's easier. It's faster to charge the standard controller. Like, if we're gonna be hitting spot after spot after spot, it's just easier to fly with my phone.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking here. I'm going up to New York City. Another spot I'd love to fly is the Tappan Zee Bridge. Now, first of all, I'm pretty sure that this has been renamed. It says Governor Mario M. Cuomo Bridge, but the Tappan Zee Bridge. But as we spoke about, and I'm pretty sure our first podcast episode, there was somebody who was flying there, a TFR kicked in, and his drone landed in the water. But I'm looking right now, there's no TFR here. There's no TFR set for the future. It's all white looking straight over the Tappan Zee Bridge. So they've still got some cool cliffs up there. Push come to shove, we can just continue to go up further a little bit north, and plus getting to shoot the Tappan Zee Bridge would be awesome. That bridge is really cool.
That would be pretty hype. That would be awesome. I don't think I don't think I've ever. No, we never flew there.
We haven't, and what would be really cool is to try and shoot that bridge at nighttime, because they've got some really badass lights that come off of it. I know that I've driven up there during the nighttime, and it's kind of a pain because they alternate, and sometimes you'll get like good lights and sometimes you'll get bad lights. Like one of the nights it was lit up in yellow, and that's really not something I'd want to shoot. Also, you know what's really tough? To shoot red lights. I feel like they're so dark and they're so hard to capture, and I know that for like a really good portion of time in Philadelphia, all of the lights on all of the buildings turn red. So when you're shooting photos of the skyline, there's just no pop. Like the red almost blends in with the black. It kind of sucks.
Yeah, I noticed. Yeah, red is hard to, at least for video, it's really hard. And yeah, the yellow lights, I'm not really about that.
Yeah. Even I'm looking here. The Palisades flying off of those lookout points too. There's absolutely no airspace there. It's not like there's it's not like there's Class B or Class C airspace or whatever. I mean, it's totally open. We wouldn't even have to we wouldn't have to apply for a waiver or apply for authorization to fly there, which is great. So I hope that we can make that work, because that footage
should be able to.
I know that footage would just be awesome. Something that I've been doing recently, Ken, I know you've been doing it too, and I would recommend this to anybody, is check out like an app where you can log or record spots that you want to fly in, because I know that
Finder.
What's that?
There's the app called Spot Finder.
Okay, and is that made specifically for drones, or is that just like a general?
No, it's made specifically for drones. So if the minute you open it up, it's actually got a drone as a photo. So wherever you fly, it looks like a lot of FPV guys load some stuff there, but I've seen a lot of camera drone guys starting to upload to it as well. So yeah, Spot Finder, and all the sites are shared, and you put details and photos of everything.
So what I've been doing is I have been creating. I've actually got the iOS 13 beta on my iPhone, and they allow you to add like collections, and you can add these different points on the map. So that's what I've been doing, and whenever I go into maps, I see a little red icon over the different areas that I want to fly in. So just a good suggestion to you guys is, like, if you ever pass by somewhere and you're like, wow, I want to fly my drone here, drop a point, because I know that there's times when even you come up, Ken, and we're like, oh, where do we want to fly? We're sitting, we're thinking, we don't really know where we want to go. But if you use this app, you're going to be able to pretty much fly all the spots that you can think of. So that's a pretty good idea.
Yeah, it's just a good way to share it, and because I compare flying in spots sometimes to like trying to scrub through Netflix.
Have you ever been to Newport, Rhode Island?
I have not. You know what? I don't even think I've ever been to Rhode Island.
Okay. Well, there's part of me that when you come up here says, let's go there and fly. It's about 4.5 hours away. There is some really awesome spots to fly there, and also on the way back we can get like a cheap hotel. So we'll talk more about that, but
we can figure something out. Like I said, we don't got like crazy amount of time, but I want to maximize every moment of flight. I
know that's the one thing too, is like flying though, or trying to drive somewhere far, that just takes up so much time. I do want to look at the airspace around Newport. I know that I was speaking with Bob Fiore. I know you talked to him a little bit. And Block Island, okay, it's gone now, but he said that there was a TFR around Block Island. I'm actually even looking here on the Kitty Hawk app.
Can you get out to Block Island?
You've got to get on a ferry.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's pretty far.
Yeah, I've been out there a couple of times. In fact, there's now I guess something within the DJI Go app where if you try to fly around Block Island, there's a certain portion where you really can't fly because of the airport that's on there. And what sucks, if you look at a photo of Block Island, or if you look at a map of Block Island, the airport is smack dab in the middle. And I'm actually looking here on Kitty Hawk, and it doesn't even show this as like a controlled restricted airspace. It just shows it all as white, like you can fly anywhere you want. But if you open up the DJI Go app, it's a totally different story. But Newport also looks pretty clear. I know that they've got this airport, and even this airport, it doesn't show any sort of marking on it. It's the Newport State Airport, and there's no marking on it, so that's pretty interesting. But yeah, so guys, look, flying in cities, it's fun. It's a little bit challenging, but I think that the best shooting in cities are done on the outskirts, and that's something that can easily be done legally. You're not flying over people. You're not flying over buildings. You're not doing anything illegal in terms of drones when you do that. So I would check that out. Even Ken, I've wanted to shoot Hartford recently up in Connecticut, and there's a really beautiful river that leads up to the city, and I can just imagine being able to fly up that river towards the skyline. It would be so perfect.
Man, there's so many spots. All I know is it better narrow down by the time I get off that plane, because
we're literally talking about like going everywhere. Even Ken, he was like, "Oh, how far is Pittsburgh?"
Yeah, because I mean, we don't have much of a conception of like, I always forget tolls and stuff too, because I'm like so used to just like getting on it interstate and going, and there's like tolls and everything, and I'm like, man.
Well, I'm on ever since I got my Easy Pass, I'm on like my dad's company's Easy Pass, so I know, and
that's why I feel bad, because I'm like, he's gonna get pissed.
Like, what's funny is, and in fact, my dad got me a little Easy Pass. If for those of you who don't know what Easy Pass is, it's basically like the little transponder you put in your car, and you can just go through the tolls, and it just tracks your license plate and it bills you by your account. He gave me one of those little transponders for Christmas, like the first year after I got my car, and that's probably the most expensive Christmas present he's ever gotten me. That little piece of like $20 plastic. I mean, even like, dude, we're talking about going to New York. When you drive over when you go into New York, it's $15. It doesn't matter what you take, what tunnel, doesn't matter what bridge, it's $15. Even I believe the Verrazano Bridge, that's even more. It's like $19. It's outrageous.
I know, as funny as we're talking, I'm sitting here watching the video footage we shot when we were in NYC like 6 months ago.
Yeah.
It's just getting me hype.
I know, man. It's going to be awesome. But guys, that's going to do it for this episode. When Ken's up here in about a week, we'll be able to do an episode together. That'll be pretty cool. But let us know what you guys think of flying in cities down in the comment section. I know there's a lot of people that do it. I'd love to know maybe what city you guys fly in, what city you guys are located in. Maybe even if you don't live in a city, what's the favorite city that you've ever flown? Or if you've never flown a city, what city do you want to fly? So let us know what you think down in the comment section below, and we will catch you later.
Adios, guys.